being an activist, but what do you say to your critics?
Again, you're being an activist. I am not.
That's not appropriate, sir.
Who are you with? What's your name?
That's not an appropriate question for you to ask.
You're going to ask how many questions? You get 3?
What a stupid son of a bitch.
Good morning, Liberty lovers, Liberty curious, and anyone else tuning in to Friendly Fire. If you're watching live, then let me especially thank you for tuning in so early. This show is dedicated to interviewing libertarian candidates running for office, and only libertarian candidates. As the name suggests, candidates will be asked some tough questions, but as a fellow libertarian, I'm not here to make them look foolish or fail. Simply raising the bar for how we interview our candidates, as well as the expectation that we have for candidates. The Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in the United States and the only viable option to compete with the big two. In this episode, I bring on Tyler Cappel, who is the Libertarian candidate for Nebraska State Senate District 38. With that, let's bring Tyler in. Tyler, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and thanks for being on. Did I get your last name right?
It's Cappel.
Cappel,
Yep.
Of course.
That's okay.
As soon as I started the live feed, I was like, you know what? I forgot to ask him proper pronunciation. And unfortunately, the way that this software works, I can't talk to you verbally once we go live because then the audio gets picked up, which I guess isn't a big deal, but you know, it'd be kind of weird. Like, dude, how do I say your name? So I figure just let it be and, you know, wing it and do the best I can. So But Cappel, I will remember that in the future, and I won't make that mistake again.
No, no
All right.
worries.
So you're running for Nebraska State Senate District 38. So tell me what got you into running for this office?
Well, I joined the Libertarian Party. I guess it was back in like 2016 or so. And then I got involved with Young Americans for Liberty. I went out to Eastern Iowa and knocked doors on a campaign out there for a guy, and that kind of just kind of set me in motion for this. That was back in 2020,
Mhm.
and that's when I decided that I was going to run for myself. So
Okay. Have you enjoyed it so far?
yeah, it's a lot of work. I've got three small kids, and I'm a business owner, and so
Hmm.
it's been a lot of work. Not a lot of evenings home, but it's certainly worth it.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in because I know that you're on a time constraint, so we want to be respectful of that. So I did some research and I was checking you out. Nothing bad, don't worry. But the McCook Gazette quotes you as saying this quote: Nebraskans are worried about federal government overreach. The 30 by 30 plan, the National Heritage Act, proposed gun control legislation, the comprehensive sex education standards, and critical race theory, high taxes, and too much state spending are all big issues. So, what I'm curious about is what is this 30 by 30 plan and what is the National Heritage Act and why are they big issues?
So yeah, the 30 by 30 that's been over a little over a year ago now when Biden proposed this. But the 30 by 30 plan would take 30% of America's ground and 30% of their water and turn it into like some sort of I can't even remember now, some sort of protected land, protected waters, um, and so it would limit property owners from using their land and their water the way they want it to, and so this affected primarily the counties in southern Nebraska
Hmm.
and southwestern Nebraska, and then the counties that are directly across the border in Kansas, so the northwestern counties there, and so a lot of the county commissioners in these areas, they all voted to strike down this resolution by the Biden administration, um, and that kind of was where it stopped there. So, thankfully, it hasn't gone any further than that. But I'm sure they have some more uh, things up their sleeves that they'll try to, you know, get through at some
Right.
point in time for taking control of our land and our water.
Always be vigilant.
Yep. Let's see what else was.
The other one was the National Heritage
Oh, the
Act.
National Heritage Act. Yeah, gosh, I can't even remember what that one was exactly about. It had something to do with um, kind of the same thing. Um, I think it was mostly about, um, again, using land. They're not using land, but preserving the land and not allowing landowners to use their property the way they see fit.
Hmm, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. And I don't even remember the date. Um,
Yeah,
I,
that was like, gosh, it's been over a year ago
right.
since that's happened. So I can't even remember what the National Heritage Act was exactly about.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just pulled it up here. I'm taking a look at it. And let's see here. It says the bill establishes a national heritage areas system to recognize certain areas of the United States that tell nationally significant stories and to conserve, enhance, and interpret the area's natural, historic, and scenic and cultural resources. So a big mouthful there. It sounds like it's just something that goes through and says, do you have some sort of heritage in some sort of story, and we're going to put some sort of control over that, or
Yeah,
some oversight. I'm not going to go ahead and read through all of it, just that first sentence there. Um, we may have the delightful sounds of my son in the background, so I apologize to
no, it's
anybody if they
okay.
hear that. Sounds like he woke up on the wrong side of the bed, uh, the very much wrong side of the bed.
I know how that is.
So let me see if I can't get to a question for you so that I can mute myself. make this a little bit less painful for people. So again, I was doing some research. Looks like there's a Nebraska's voter guide, and a lot of it's just kind of actually, you know what? Let me go back. I did want to ask you one more thing because I am very unfamiliar with Nebraska at all. And we all know what proposed gun control legislation is. What is the landscape for gun ownership in Nebraska?
So right now it's pretty easy to get your concealed carry. Right now, Pete Ricketts, our governor, made it a little bit easier. So we don't have to take a class for it. We can just go to our uh, our sheriff and we can ask for one. Um, and then you have to file online with the Nebraska State Patrol, I believe it is. But it's very very simple now. But again, you still have to have a license. So we're trying to get constitutional carry passed.
Hmm.
That was a bill this last legislative session that failed to pass. But I'm sure it'll be picked up again here this next session.
Right. Okay. So it's pretty. So you've got.
We're pretty friendly. The Omaha area, the metropolitan areas are a lot less friendly though. But
Oh,
here in
gotcha.
rural Nebraska, we're pretty friendly.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, we're over here in Florida. We are still waiting for the Republicans to actually make any kind of significant move for constitutional carry. Governor DeSantis and other Republicans keep dragging their feet and basically making up excuses why it's not the right time, or you
Hmm.
know later, whatever, what have you. So we're waiting, and our governor candidate is pushing for that. But we'll see how that all plays out. At any rate, so going back to that Nebraska voters guide, most of the stuff is pretty run of the mill. Parental rights, school choice. There were two things that were kind of connected that I was curious about. One of them was it says so on there. It shows that you support limitations on girls' sports, locker rooms, women's restrooms based on biological sex, but then oppose sex education that promotes transgender ideology and use of pronouns. Is that actually a major issue in Nebraska?
Um, it is in the larger more metropolitan areas. It's certainly an issue. I haven't seen any issues. Again, I live in a community of 1,000 people, and the nearest Walmart's 45 miles away. So
Okay,
you can imagine where we're at.
right.
Like I said, very very small rural area, farming community. So you live next door to your your school board members. You go
Hmm.
to church with them, you interact with them on the weekend. So we're very close knit communities around here. So thankfully we haven't really seen any of this coming into our schools here. But again, like you said before, we need to be vigilant and make sure that that our children are protected. um,
Hmm.
because again, uh, very conservative out here,
Okay,
and people do not want you know boys in the girls' locker rooms and all that sort of thing.
gotcha. Now I understand that your race is nonpartisan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, presuming still that your candidacy is still driven by libertarian principles.
Hmm.
So, kind of let me push a little bit and see what you say on the issue of restrooms, at least for private business. Should that actually be left up to businesses rather than a decision at any state level or any government level?
Yeah, for private businesses, certainly it should be left up to them. A lot of the restaurants around here are just single stall,
Okay.
restrooms. So it's typically you go open the door and then you go in and you lock it behind you.
Right.
So, um, but yeah, I'm not sure how you deal with with the WalMarts and that sort of thing, and the chain stores that are having those types of restrooms. But I think they would understand the complexity of the issue and start doing more single stall restrooms, and so hopefully that I would like to see those companies make more make more innovations and try to keep all of their consumers happy.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. I didn't think it would be necessary, depending on, again, where you are in Nebraska. If you're in a smaller town, then I would imagine that it's less of an issue. And then, of course, if you go to the major cities, which off the top of my head, I'm not even sure what's your largest city.
Our largest city is Omaha.
Okay. Oh, wait, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have Lincoln, Omaha, Kearney's. Kearney's a big town, but it's like 30,000 people.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, Lincoln and Omaha are the two biggest.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's talk about your race here.
Yeah.
The primary specifically. I want to talk about the lead up and the general election. So your opponent right now is Dave Merman.
Hmm.
He is a member of the Republican Party. Remember, folks, this is a nonpartisan race. He's also the incumbent since 2019. And here's what I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. But here's what Ballotpedia shows for the primary between you and Mr. Merman here. So let me go ahead and add that to the screen. There we go. So it shows that out of the votes, you received 34% and he received 66%. First, right off the bat, you mentioned it a moment ago. I'm going to assume that you're in a pretty heavy red area.
Yeah.
Okay. So because I looked at the last one, and the last one didn't appear to, the last election, as far as I could tell, did not appear to have a Democrat running either, or a Libertarian. So it's generally a Republican area.
Hmm.
So out of curiosity, what do you believe contributed most to you receiving 34% of the vote in the primary?
Name recognition. Yeah, like I said before, I'm a business owner. I've been in the community for almost 10 years now. I'm fairly active. I've been I was on the library board for 3 years here in town. So I've been fairly active. So name recognition in my area, Furnace County and Red Willow County, which is where I have a lot of family. So the Cappel last name, there's, businesses with the name Cappel in it. There's, my family's been there for generations. So the name recognition really, really helped.
Gotcha. And following that, then it looks like you're going to need, if this with these percentages, you're going to need another 17 percentage points in the general election to win. So
Yeah.
what's your plan to capture that?
Talking to as many voters as possible. So myself and a few members of my team, we've been out knocking doors and talking to people. We've been doing parades and just being out in the general eye, and just social media has helped as well. But door knocking by far, that's when I went to Eastern Iowa to knock doors for Young Americans for Liberty, that was what convinced me that that's how you win elections. Is you talk to the voters, you meet them where they are, and you give them the libertarian solutions to the problems that they are seeing.
Got it. Do you find that that knocking doors has a similar effect, and maybe you won't know the answer, but it's okay, in a larger city versus a smaller, more rural city?
It's probably better in a smaller area. When I went to Eastern Iowa, it was a very rural area as well. So, again, it was a heavily red district that we went to, but it wasn't as red as what my area is. But I think it works probably better in more of a rural setting.
Okay.
But again, Young Americans for Liberty, they've had great success, but they're not libertarian. They are, they're pushing Republican candidates.
Right.
So it is a little bit different.
Gotcha. And since you're talking about having a pretty solid red area, are there many Democrat or independent votes even to capture?
Not a ton.
Okay.
No. I mean, there certainly are, but they're not the Democrats that you typically think of right now with the culture war going on. It's not the radical leftists. It's just it's elderly people who have been Democrats their whole lives. It's some younger people too that are pro-choice, that are very concerned about their schools. So they're not the Democrats that you typically think of when you watch the news.
Okay.
They're concerned with they want to get medical marijuana or they want recreational marijuana. Those are the issues that they're really concerned with.
Got it. Well, that's clearly something that you can highlight, because on your answer to the Nebraska voter guide, here's what you said for anybody that's watching it. It isn't the government's job to decide what we put into our own bodies. I personally don't smoke marijuana, but I am against the use of aggression against someone who is smoking it or taking edibles in the comfort of their own home, not infringing on anyone else's rights. So right there, it sounds like you've got, something that you can appeal to, maybe just a few Democrats voters out there. Do you know where your opponent stands on those kind of issues that might appeal to Democrats?
Yeah, so he is against medical marijuana. He voted against a medical marijuana bill, I think 2 years ago, and he's been pretty outspoken about being against it. And he typically seems to toe the line with Pete Ricketts, our governor,
Hmm.
and he's very against it as well. So I typically think that's I don't think that's going to change.
Gotcha. Okay. Got a question from the audience here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but let me pull it up on the screen. So this is actually from one of our own candidates here in Jacksonville, who's also is running for city council, and he also happens to be running for lieutenant governor here in Florida. And he wants to know if COVID affected door knocking when you were out and about.
Oh no, absolutely not. People around here, for the general part of it, are all over the COVID
Okay.
issue. Yeah.
Did you have much of an impact in your area, like with shutdowns, or did people just kind of continue on with what they were busy doing?
Most people continued on. I think I remember Ricketts shut down like hair salons for a few weeks at the very beginning, but after that, it was just very back to normal. Our schools instituted a mask mandate for our kids. I wound up taking my son out of school over the issue, and we homeschooled him for a year while that was going on. But then once that was
Right.
over, we sent him back.
So your son won't be part of the crowd that's behind then, because you actually not only just pulled him out, but you actually continued his education.
Hmm.
That's good, because there are reports out now about how students are, so far behind. They're of course blaming it on COVID rather than the dictators who shut down schools and said nope, no school for you.
Hmm.
Um, but so that's good. I think it's really good to see, not just people in general, but maybe even candidates who took, some initiative and said, hey, you know what, I don't like this idea. And, I don't know if well, I guess you weren't a candidate back then,
No.
necessarily, but, candidates who at least at one point acted and behaved in a way that seems consistent with how they, are running, the
Hmm.
principles and the ideas that they're running on. I know a lot of people will say homeschool, but then maybe they don't with their own kids. So kudos to you on that. Okay, so I want to get to our bill review here, and
Hmm.
I have a nifty little segue into the bill review. So let me segue that. I'll bring you back on in just a moment, and then we'll talk about these two bills that you sent me.
But I know I'll be a law someday, at least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
All right. So what I do is I ask the candidates to go ahead and send me a bill for review. And the idea is simply that what we'll do is we'll read the bill or read it in part. Some of these bills are very lengthy, and so I'm not going to read them all because I'm not voting on them, so there's no obligation there. But we'll read them in part, and then we discuss them. The bill can be anything that the candidates choose. So it could be a bill that's from another state, or it could be a bill that is on the docket currently in their own state. It can be one that's related to the position that they are running for, or one that's related to another position. So maybe they're running for a local office, but they want to talk about a state level bill, and that's okay. The idea is that we normalize reading bills for the American public. And the reason for that is that when you read the bill, then there's a higher expectation that the people who are actually voting on them will read the bill. And there's a higher likelihood that they will be unable to pull the wool over your eyes. So we want to get used to reading bills in as much as we possibly can. And honestly, if the American people started reading bills and started seeing the length of some of these bills, I'm going to tell you what will happen. They will get tired of it and they will say, you need to cut these bills down shorter because I'm tired of reading a 3,000, 2,000 page bill. So let's bring Tyler on. We're going to talk about these two bills. All right. We got you back, Tyler. And these two bills happen to be from Texas, and they are a little bit older bills. The first one is SB 989, and it establishes a state bullion depository. Think of that as basically like Fort Knox, but for Texas. And then you have SB 1245, which is kind of like a companion bill. And what that one does is it establishes gold or silver in the form of either coin or bullion as legal tender. So these are from Texas. So what motivated you to support presumably similar bills for Nebraska?
Well, sound money is certainly a very libertarian thing. I don't know if you've ever talked to another libertarian before, but we're kind of all about ending the Fed.
Right.
So. But yeah, so my theory is, we're never going to convince the federal government to do something on sound money. So the states have to do it.
Okay.
And this is one way we try and decentralize the Federal Reserve's power is by getting sound money back to the states. This certainly isn't a cure-all, but it hopefully would set in motion something to again try to provide an alternative to the currency that we are using right now.
Right. So how does that come? I assume that you're talking to voters about this, and I actually like the idea. I think it's a great idea to say, you know what, the likelihood is that we're going to have a huge uphill battle to get this in place at the national level. So maybe we start with the state level, and then eventually then that becomes an easier conversation. So my question to you is, I know that libertarians love talking about end the Fed. They love talking about going back to the gold standard. But what I want to hear is how the conversation goes for you when you're talking to everyday people who that's not their everyday conversation. They're not these crazy libertarians that are like, what, you want to hear about my ideas? And the Fed, that's my idea.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation?
Well, I try to keep it really short because when you're talking to voters at the door, they don't want to spend, most of them don't want to spend 10 or 15 minutes, going through everything in the history of gold and silver and that sort of thing. So, you really break it down just into the very basics of what we should do. And that really kind of revolves around, allowing our state treasurer to start purchasing gold and silver for like pension funds. So our teachers pension fund and our Nebraska State Patrol pension fund are together here in Nebraska. So we could start investing that way. And then, and this is something that I've still learning about because it's not, it's easy to talk about these things in the abstract. But when you talk about actually like what's step one, what's step two, what's step three, it becomes a little bit more complicated. So I've been speaking with JP Cortez from the Sound Money Defense League, and he's been giving me some pointers and some talking points. But so yeah, doing the the pension funds first, and then building the gold and silver depository here in Nebraska would be kind of step number two. And then step number three might be using things like gold backs for, I don't know if you're familiar with gold backs or not, but those types of things would be another alternative as a currency for people to use, store at, different store transactions and that sort of thing. But yeah, like I said, it's a little bit more complicated when you talk about it in reality. But the way to just try and simplify it as much as possible. But people really understand. They see their prices going up on everything, and I think most people are starting to see through the lies that they've been told. They understand that it's the printing of trillions of dollars that's causing this. It's not. It's not corporations raising prices. It's not Putin that's causing this. So
you better be careful there. You might start sounding like a Putin apologist.
Yes, I know.
All right. So I on your website you were saying that Nebraska's economy is largely based in the agriculture industry. So do you see the agriculture industry as welcoming or would be welcoming would welcome the idea of a gold standard for the state or a uh, not just gold but gold and silver?
I would hope so. I think it's a real solution to a serious problem that we have.
Mhm.
Um, Again, it's not a cure-all, but it's something that can certainly help. Um, the people that I talk to, whether it's uh, farmers or just your average person, they all think it's a good idea. I mean,
Okay.
I've gotten Democrats that support me because of it. I've got Republicans and independents that support me because of it. So that's one of my major talking points when I do knock on doors, because I would say 30 or 40% when I ask them what's their biggest concern um, in our state right now, and they say it's inflation. So
Okay. So, because, and the reason I asked that, if you have an industry, agriculture being a very large contributing industry to your economy, then I assume that the feeling of those in agriculture are going to largely kind of make that decision. Like if you get elected, you start, crafting your bill, and then you push forward. I would assume that that's where the rubber hits the road, right? Like when you come to the agriculture industry.
uh-huh.
But by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't even know that I've ever been to Nebraska. I don't think I have,
Yeah,
and that's not to say anything negative. I just haven't been there yet. So,
it's a great state. You should come visit.
is it warm there?
A few months out of the year, it's really hot, and then the rest of the time, it's really cold.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So I'll have to find those few months of the year because I whine and complain when it gets below like 60. So I don't know. I don't know if that tells you about how
Oh
well I
yeah,
would survive there.
it's like 35 right now. So
Wait a minute. Right now?
right now, yeah, but it'll be 80.
Holy
It'll be 80
wow.
degrees later on this afternoon.
Oh, you're in
Yeah,
one of those states.
yeah. You can have all four seasons in one day.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. What's the weather here in Jacksonville right now? So the weather here in Jacksonville, the temperature is, give me a second. I will pull it up. It's 73 degrees right now at 8 a.m. in the morning. So,
It's not too bad.
and let's see, what is the high? The high is going to be 84 today. So we're in fall. So that's the running joke. You've probably seen the memes, the picture where everything is like blue across the US and then you see like orange and red in Florida. And then it's like, why nobody likes Florida. Right. Well, yeah, so that's us. We're a nice warm state. So, all right, awesome. What have we not talked about that you need to get out? What did I miss when I did my research and said these are the things we're going to talk about? What did I miss?
Oh man. Let me think.
I know your website has some good stuff on it. Like you've
Yeah.
got, you're talking about making Nebraska a Second Amendment sanctuary. So that's
Yeah.
always a good thing.
Yeah. Well, my whole campaign, I talk about decentralization of power, and
Okay.
it's because Congress and our whole federal government is unaccountable for what's going on in our country. Um, they're on massive power trips. They obviously tax us way too much and spend way too much money. So again, and I think a lot of people out here, or a lot of Republicans, and this is probably the fault of Republicans, is they think that, oh, we just have to get Republicans in office and then we'll fix everything. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, libertarians all know that's completely untrue.
Right.
And so part of my campaign is trying to convince people that, listen, there are a couple of decent Republicans there, but most of the time they're all horrible. They failed to do anything on Obamacare. Now they're protecting Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
Decades ago they talked about trying to get rid of the Federal Department of Education, and now they all love the Federal Department of Education. It's all, it's what Michael Malice says is that conservatism is progressivism going the speed limit. it's 100% true, because everything that the progressives were for 10 years ago, now the Republicans are in favor of. So it's convincing people that we're not going to make substantial changes at the federal level.
Mhm.
It's the states that really have to start stepping up, protecting people's rights, and that's, again, that's the Second Amendment sanctuary. That's, I'm a very pro-life person. That's, putting reasonable restrictions on abortion. That's why we need to, um, institute gold and silver as legal tender here in Nebraska. Um, that's why we need school choice. That's why we need, um, what else is there? Yeah, all of the things that I have on my website. I mean, these are all ways to try and decentralize the power, away from the federal government, and in certain cases, decentralize it away from the state government too, because they're not great protectors of our rights either. So I think, every libertarian wants the individual to be in control of their life as much as possible, but we have to start with trying to get it out of the hands of the federal government and get
Mhm.
it back to the states, and then we can start, you know, moving things from there.
Do you find it challenging when you're talking about libertarian ideas, when you're having a conversation with somebody? I know that for me here, some of my friends, the biggest challenge that I face is once we get into like foreign policy, and we talk about a wide range of topics. So I'm not a candidate, but
Hmm.
um, so I could talk about anything. It doesn't matter because I'm not necessarily bound. I don't want to say bound, but it's not prudent of me to necessarily focus more on local issues. I can talk about any issue,
Uh-huh.
but I know that foreign policy is an issue that some of my friends struggle with when it comes to libertarian ideas. Are there certain ideas that you find that are very that people just aren't receptive to when you talk to them?
um, some of your more, we want to say, like, establishment Republicans are
Hmm.
certainly very against the idea of medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, and that seems to be a big issue here, with them. Um, um, I don't really talk a lot about um, necessarily libertarian ideas. I
Hmm.
just try to talk about solutions with people.
Okay.
So if they have, a specific issue, then I'll certainly give them a libertarian perspective. But I don't say, well, I'm a libertarian and this is what I think. I just try to give them, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head of what people are bringing up to me. But
Right.
um,
So you're focusing on topics that people are talking about in
yeah,
Nebraska, not
yeah,
necessarily topics in general.
yeah.
The reason one of the reasons why I ask is I'm always curious to hear how others experience talking about liberty in whatever way that it comes about, whether it's talking about specific issues that are local to you or whether you're just having, a chit chat with some friends over dinner.
Hmm.
And we are affiliate here in Jacksonville. We went to a hobnob a while back, and I remember a guy came up to me and I was at the table and he said, "What's your guys' opinion or what's your view on abortion?" And I said, "Well, in the Libertarian Party, it's it's divided kind of like it is in the rest of the country." And he stopped me cold and he's like, "It's not divided. There's only one answer," or something like that. And I was like, "Okay." And it really threw me off. I'm usually a little bit more, I'm better able to, uh, come back and respond. But at that time, he just kind of cut me right off at the knees, and I was like, "Oh, okay," because he really just wanted to hear one answer,
Yeah.
and that's fine. And I wasn't sure if you got kind of questions like that, where someone says, "Well, what do you think about this?" And then it becomes a bit of a challenging conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right
Well,
now.
lucky you.
I know, right?
Right. So, but hey, you know what? Hopefully you're ready for when that day comes. I imagine that
Yeah,
it will.
yeah.
So, are you getting good media traction down there?
Fairly. Yeah, the newspapers are very friendly, and that's the big
Right.
media out here is the newspapers. We do have one television station that's, about 45 miles away from us, but they tend to focus on the big city stuff for the
Okay.
most part.
Is everything 40 miles away from you?
Pretty
Because you said
much.
Walmart was earlier.
Yeah. We have two. We have a Walmart that's west of us, 40 miles, and another Walmart north of us that's 40 miles. And yeah, so we're just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, which is nice if you're a libertarian, because then people don't know where you are and you can kind of
Right.
hide. It's easier to
No,
hide.
it's just I've spent so much time either living in the city or living like very much on the outskirts, but still within a few minutes of
Uh-huh.
getting into the city. So when someone's like, I live 40 miles from, the nearest Walmart, and I'm like, if I drew 40 miles in a circle around me, there's like 6 Walmarts,
Yeah.
so so it's very different. It's interesting to hear that,
Uh-huh.
just because I don't know how I don't know how I would like that. Just having everything so far away.
Yeah, my wife and I, we lived in St. Louis for 4 years while she was in school, and
Hmm.
uh, we decided to move back, and it took some time to adjust back to the small town life, because this is the town where she grew up.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, you settle in pretty quick. Thankfully, Amazon, that
Right.
came along pretty quick after our move back. So the
Oh,
Amazon
nice.
Prime, so we could order stuff in if we needed to. But yeah, it's a much more comfortable way of life. My office is 3 blocks from where we live, and uh, we have our city pool is right behind my office, so my kids go swimming during the summer. I take them to work with me. I mean, people in the big cities, they don't have those luxuries of taking their
Right.
kids to work with them. They don't have. Uh, you really should come visit rural Nebraska. The people are fantastic. Even the people that disagree with you on political issues, they're still friendly to you.
Good. Good.
Um,
What are
you
those
know,
warm months again?
the warm
June and
months,
August. June, July,
the hot
August.
months is like, yeah, June, July, August,
All
and then
right.
half of September.
Okay. So those are the months that I can come out. I am totally unavailable any other month. Definitely the calendar's booked to only warm places. So I'll be traveling to Miami this week. So that'll be fun. It's been a long time since I've been to Miami. So, all right. I do want to respect your time. I know that you
Yeah.
said you are on a time constraint. Anything else that that you want to talk about? Where, how can people support you? Just go to your website. Are you active on social media?
Yeah, my website, tylercappelforlegislature.com. My Facebook page, just facebook.com/Tyler Cappel for Legislature. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's where I'm most active, is on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tyler, it was great to have you on. I look forward to watching out and seeing how your race turns out. There's a really good chance that on November 8th, I will be doing a day long podcast where I just kind of check in on the results of, every libertarian that I can find,
Okay.
and just kind of report those and see how those go. It's not a final decision yet, but it's looking pretty strong. So we'll see. And if I do, then I'll be definitely checking in to see the results of your race and see how that goes and see if you get that 51%.
All right.
So, but again, thank you for coming on, especially so early in the morning, because I believe you're an hour behind me. Correct? It's
Correct.
just
Yeah.
just past 7 there. So, um, I very much appreciate you, uh, you know, helping me out by being on the show live, so we didn't have to schedule something, after hours to accommodate. So I very much
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close this show out. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I want you to tune in tomorrow as I bring on Cody McNutt, who is Delaware's at-large congressional district candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. Otherwise, that's all for today. You can find other episodes at libertydad.com. Those are going to be your audio only. You can find archived video episodes at youtube.libertydad.com. You can also connect with me at LibertyDad on Facebook, LibertyDadPod on Twitter, or email to libertydadpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. And remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. Have a great week. Catch you next time, and I'm out.